The Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act is also known as JJDPA. It has 4 parts: Deinstitutionalization of status offenders, aka DSO. A status offender is a juvenile charged with or adjudicated for conduct that would not, under the law of the jurisdiction in which the offense was committed, be a crime if committed by an adult. Adult jail and lockup removal. This requirement focuses on removing juveniles from adult jails and detention facilities. Sight and sound separation. This requirement ensures that accused and adjudicated delinquents, status offenders, and non-offending juveniles are not detained or confined in any institution where they may have contact with adult inmates. And racial and ethnic disparities. This requirement focuses on helping states address and eliminate racial and ethnic disparities within the juvenile justice system. No juvenile shall be detained or confined in any jail or lockup for adults, subject to certain exceptions, which I described later. Juveniles who are accused of status offenses, i.e. status offenders, juveniles who are not accused of any offense, i.e. non-offenders, and juveniles who have been adjudicated as delinquent may not be detained or confined for any length of time in an adult jail or lockup.
Hey Johnson, don't forget we've got that new detainee to deal with. He needs to be processed today.
Yeah, I heard about his case. Just throw him in the tank. We'll deal with it later. He's not going anywhere.
Right. So, is the tank empty? Do we have an empty cell where we can house the juvenile temporarily? Remember, he's not 18. We can't just leave them in the general population. That's a violation of sight and sound separation policy.
I think there's an empty isolation cell. It's secure and has its own restroom facilities. It's not ideal, but it should keep the juvenile separate.
Sounds good. Tell the rest of the staff to ensure there's no accidental contact with adult inmates. And make sure the cameras are working in that area for monitoring.
I'll inform the shift supervisor to keep a close eye on that cell. Do we have a list of approved personnel who can interact with them?
Yeah, I've got a list from the administration. Only authorized personnel will be allowed near the juvenile, and we'll keep a log of all interactions. That should help us stay compliant.
There are some situations where a juvenile may be imprisoned in an adult jail. For example, 6-hour exception allows juveniles accused of delinquent offenses, not status offenders, to be detained or confined in a jail or lockup for adults for a period not to exceed 6 hours for processing or release, while awaiting transfer to a juvenile facility, or while awaiting an initial court appearance. Rural exception. In order to comply with this exception, jails or lockups must be approved as a rural area by IDJC. Travel conditions. Allows for a juvenile accused of a delinquent offense to be held in an adult jail or lockup if the facility is located where the lack of highway, road, or transportation, such as where alternative travel arrangements may include the use of snowmobiles, floatplanes, and watercraft, does not allow for court appearances within 48 hours, excluding weekends and holidays, so that brief not to exceed 48 hours. Delay is excusable. Conditions of safety. Sight and sound separation from adult inmates must always apply. However, even in the event of these exceptions, the juvenile must be accompanied by staff who are trained and certified to work with juveniles, and they are under no circumstances to have sight or sound contact with adult inmates. If a juvenile is charged and convicted as an adult, their separation from a juvenile facility is handled by the Prison Rape and Elimination Act or PREA, not the JJDPA. If the juvenile reaches the full age of criminal responsibility while in custody, the juvenile may be considered for extended juvenile court jurisdiction. Juveniles who are delinquent offenders, status offenders, not charged with an offense but are unauthorized immigrants or alleged to be dependent, neglected, or abused, or juveniles charged as adults detained in an adult facility shall not have sight or sound contact with adult inmates in a jail, lockup, secure detention, or secure correctional facility. Individuals who work in a co-located facility where both juveniles and adults are housed must have been trained and certified to work with juveniles. If a juvenile is detained or confined in an adult lockup or jail, the juvenile must be removed from the facility within 6 hours. The sight and sound separation requirement still applies during this time. The only exceptions to the 6-hour rule include: 1. The juvenile is detained in a rural facility, which allows 48 hours for a juvenile to be removed from the facility. IDJC determines which facilities qualify for this rural exception. 2. For juveniles charged as adults, there must be an initial determination that it is in the interest of justice for the juvenile to remain in an adult facility. An interest of justice hearing must take place every 30 days in which the juvenile remains detained in an adult facility. Youth who are under juvenile court jurisdiction who commit a new offense after turning 18 are considered adults and must not have sight or sound contact with juvenile detainees.